Hello and welcome to 5-Year Club video number 212. Oh boy, and we have another blah 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 testing. Okay, good. We have another story from the Japanese Family Storehouse. You know what? I'm having a rough time kind of keeping up with my life and doing this, so this is how I can stay consistent. But I really should break it up with a non-obscure Japanese story video. I think tomorrow might be the day for that. It's a Sunday. Yep, but not tonight. Tonight, we have the third story from the fifth book of this 333-year-old text by Ihara Saikaku, translated by G.W. Sargent. And I gotta say, the title tonight's very intriguing. A solitary bean which lighted the way. It's a very mysterious bean. What is going on here? Let's find out. In the village of Asahi, living wretchedly in a mean hut with horn-like outhouses, but with not an ox to his name, was a small farm holder called Kabata no Kosuke. He tilled the land unaided, driving his hoe into the ore-laden earth, while his wife sat weaving hemp from early dawn at a towering Yamato loom. Autumn after autumn, he measured out the same 1 1/4 koku of tax rice for the Lord. Every New Year's Eve, until past his 50th year, though without any visible improvement in his fortunes, he hung his narrow windows with holly sprigs and sardine heads, as careful as any to bar entrance to invisible demons, and scattered parched beans over the floor with fervent prayers for luck. One year, on the morning after Setsubun, when he was gathering up these beans, he took one and planted it in some wasteland. Miracles sometimes happen, he thought, and he waited to see whether even a toasted bean could bear flowers. There was no denying the results. That summer it sprouted green stalks and leaves, and when autumn came and the pods were filled, he gathered more than 2 handfuls of beans. He scattered these along the water channels on his land, carefully re-sowing the yield each year and cutting back the stalks. The number of plants grew steadily larger and larger, and after 10 years had passed, they bore a crop of 88 koku. When he had sold these beans and had a great stone lantern constructed and set it by the Heise high road to light the way at night, known as the Lantern of the Beans, it shines to this day, telling us of Kosuke's success. All things grow bigger in time, and our largest ambitions are not beyond hope of ultimate fulfillment. In this spirit, Kosuke gradually increased his household's prosperity, bought more and more land, and eventually became a farmer of the first magnitude. Manuring, weeding, and watering the soil for every crop in every season, he watched the ripening ears of rice grow fat and full, and the cotton plants blossom with numberless flowers. If his harvests were richer than his neighbors', it was no chance of fate, but the result of unremitting toil from morn to dusk till spade and hoe were worn to stumps. He was also a man of great inventiveness, and he thought out many devices which have proved a boon to mankind. He invented the rake, with its row of iron teeth, and nothing has ever been found of greater assistance to man in breaking the surface of soil. I think we might argue with that today. Next followed the Tomino winnowing fan and the 1,000 koku sifter, and since threshing purely by hand was a time-consuming labor, he devised an implement with a row of pointed bamboo prongs, which he called the widow's downfall, and whereas 2 people had formerly been required to thresh his grain, when this implement was used, 1 person could manage it all conveniently and without effort. The labors of the women in preparing cotton were slow too, particularly the whipping of the ginned cotton, which they did at the rate of barely 5 kin in a whole day. After puzzling over this problem, and making inquiries about Chinese methods, he devised the Chinese bow, and experimented with it in secret, using a novel type of wooden plucker for the string. When he discovered that with one bow he could manage 3 kanmei per day, he bought vast snowy mountains of ginned cotton, trained a host of operatives, and forwarded bale after bale of whipped cotton to Edo. In 4 or 5 years he became a man of great wealth, one of the foremost cotton dealers of Yamato province. Though each of the cotton brokers at Hirono-Mura and Osaka's Kiyobashi, such firms as Tandaya, Zinnia, and Tinojaya, he daily bought countless hundreds of kanmei of ginned cotton from Setsu and Kawachi provinces, and he made such profits every year in the short whipping season from autumn to winter, that at his death, a little more than 30 years later, he bequeathed a fortune of 1,000 kanmei. Okay, I really did not get that sentence, so we're going to try this again. Through each of the cotton brokers at Hirono-Mura and Osaka's Kiyobashi, I think I said though before, through each of the cotton brokers of blah 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 and blah blah blah, such firms as Tandaya, Zinnia, and Tinojaya, he daily bought countless hundreds of kanmei of ginned cotton from Setsu and Kawachi provinces, and he made such profits every year in the short whipping season from autumn to winter that at his death, a little more than 30 years later, he bequeathed a fortune of 1,000 kanmei. Okay, that makes more sense. Throughout his life, he had known no relaxation, having spent every moment working for his descendants. He died at the age of 88. Since he died like a saint, and died moreover on the anniversary of Amida's enlightenment, his prayers for salvation in the Western Paradise must certainly have been answered. His remains were turned to smoke over the funeral ground, and 100 days later, when the head priest of the Ariwara temple had been summoned as a witness in accordance with Kasuke's last wishes and had been offered a suitably frugal meal, the box containing the will was opened. All my money, 1,700 kanmei, I give to my only son, Kunosuke. Likewise, my house, land, and effects, which I need not here specify. Next, he listed the parting gifts to each of his relatives. To my aunt in the village of Miwa, 1 hand-woven cotton kimono of crisscross pattern, 1 neckcloth of pongee, 1 mulberry walking stick. To my younger brother in Shimoichi, Yoshino, my cotton coat of a 3-star stencil pattern, and my rough-woven shoulder pieces. To my younger sister in Okadera, 1 dark blue cotton gown with black neckband attached, and 1 vest of unbleached hemp. To her only son, my nephew, the striped mattress which was under me during my illness, and 1 pair of brown leather socks. He must first stitch these to a smaller size. 2 articles, my bamboo tobacco pipe and my muffler of Hino silk, I bequeath to my doctor, Nakabayashi Dohakuro. My summer cloak of persimmon juice dye, the sleeves a little rat bitten, but he can patch them up, I confer to my temple-going companion, Nizaimon. There were 2 clerks who had faithfully served the household for many years, and to one he bequeathed an old discarded abacus, and to the other the scales the clerk had always used. Before the contents of the will were known, everyone had entertained high hopes for themselves, and they could hardly wait for their names to be read. They were dumbfounded when they discovered that not a penny of the actual money was to be theirs. When you can't even count on money from your rich relatives, things are pretty bad, they grumbled. They dried the tears which they had been producing so readily up to this point, and returned in disgust to their native villages. To amass this 1,700 kanmei, Kasuke had spent a whole lifetime in economizing, and he could hardly have been expected to be lavish with his money now, no matter how keen his relatives were to have it. When Kasuke's effects were examined, it became evident that throughout his life he had never worn silk next to his skin. In his evil year of 42, he had purchased, for the first time in his life, a silken loincloth, but it now remained as new, innocent of any trace of use. The outer garments which the old man had worn were found to be no more than those mentioned in the will. Of ornamental accessories, there were only a dagger, with a wisteria coil handle and a walnut hilt pin, a leather purse with a carved button of deer horn, and a plain black drug container. Konosuke felt rather ashamed of his father's stinginess, and he soon disregarded the will, giving a share of his inheritance to various relatives and even to the clerks. All were naturally delighted. They declared that he was a much more understanding person than his father, and they started to visit his house once more. For a while, Konosuke carried on the business much as in the old days. One day, however, an acquaintance induced him to visit a small village called Nyoto at the foot of Tafu no Mine, where towering bands of boy actors from Kyoto and Osaka often took secret lodgings, and after this he returned to the place with steadily increasing frequency. He developed a taste for the other way of love, too, and started affairs in Kitsuji, the Nara brothel quarter. When these no longer interested him, he went up to Kyoto regularly, and there he hired every courtesan the go-betweens recommended, drifting on the tide of love from the present Madame Japan as far as Lady China. His mother, greatly distressed at this endless dissipation, arranged for him to marry a particularly attractive girl from Toichi village, but a man who had become accustomed to the fine ladies of the quarters could never content himself with a country wife, and his mother's anxieties continued until, very soon, she followed her husband to the grave. There was now no one left to remonstrate with Konosuke, and he thought of nothing year after year but his riotous pleasures. Even his employees lost all respect for him, and took no further interest in their work. However, in the course of time, his wife bore him 3 sons, and at least he had no worries on the score of succession. Drink and women between them steadily undermined Konosuke's health, and after 8 or 9 years he was in an almost hopeless state. At the age of 34, suddenly, but to no one's great surprise, he passed away, and his remains were borne to the burial ground. Konosuke had been well aware of his state of health, and had drawn up a will in readiness for death. His sons, however, were still very young, and the clerks were rather worried about this. Perhaps it would be best if their money were entrusted to our charge, they said. We can surrender it to each of them later as they come of age. Their anxiety did credit to their hearts, and the local people greatly admired this demonstration of faithfulness towards the departed master. There were loud exclamations of surprise, however, when the will itself was opened. And, well, there might have been, for the whole fortune of 1,700 kanmei had gone, and this was a statement and a formal bequest of debts. It quite dampened the company's spirits. To Izutsuya of Kichizaburo of Kyoto, I owe 250 ryo. Since I borrowed this when desperately in need of money in a shameful place, and thereby avoided disgrace, this is a debt which involves a moral obligation. My son and heir, Kutaro, therefore, when he reaches manhood, must work hard at some occupation in order to repay it. Attached is a list of outstanding debts for my entertainment in Dotonbori, Osaka. These are to be paid by my second son, Kujiro. In addition, I have purchased goods on credit from various places. These debts amount to only 30 kanmei, and they may be paid by my third son, Kuzaburo, as occasion offers. As for the house, land, and official and household effects, it is best to declare bankruptcy and surrender these to my local creditors. The expenses for the funeral and mourning shall be the responsibility of my widow. This is my last will and testament to be carried out in accordance with the above clauses. And that is it. That's kind of like a Tales from the Crypt ending. It's like the difference between 2 wills. One where the guy has tons of money but he's really stingy, and the other where the guy has tons of debt and he's spreading it around. Which one would you rather have? Neither one, Lewis. They both sound like crap to me. Fair enough. All right, well, that is it for 5-Year Club video number 212, a solitary bean which lighted the way. Have a fabulous evening. Cat butt. Yeah.